we don't know where we're at here, man. Like, this is unknown, uncharted terrain. So flat Earth is a really, I don't believe the Earth is flat. I think it's more like a triangle shape. But I
think it's a big dick.
It's a giant.
It's a cosmic dick.
That would be.
We're looking at the head of the dick.
And they just don't want us to know that because it's kind of embarrassing. Like the fucking Earth looks like a big spinning dick.
It's all CGI, bro. It's shaped like a dick.
It's just a big blue and white fucking dick. Green.
Yeah, why do people want that? We always want things to be weird, right? We want, like, the flat Earth one is my favorite one because it just could you imagine if they were right? Can you imagine if they were right? Imagine if the whole planet thought the world was round and there's all this information that shows the world is round. Thousands of years ago, people were doing calculations or sticking sticks into the ground at equal distance and measuring them and trying to see if there's curvature. And there's always been people that suspected the Earth was round way before they could ever figure it out. They were trying to say, the moon is round, the sun is round, this is round. Huh.
Yeah.
Probably this is round.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, she would kind of think, well, how big is this fucking thing? And then if you get up high enough, you can kind of see, like, wow, if it's just really big, I see, like, a very slight curvature. Like, maybe I do. Am I mind fucking myself?
Right.
And if you just sat around and mind fucked yourself into thinking that it was all a scam.
Yeah.
And that the world is actually flat. And then gravity isn't real either. Everybody's wrong.
Yeah.
Except a guy on YouTube.
It's exciting.
It's magnets that pull people into the Earth.
Dude, your life gets so exciting at that point because now you feel danger.
Yes.
You're risking your fucking ass by getting out there because the nassholes are going to take you out, dude.
If the Clinton Foundation finds out about your theories about the Earth being flat,
you're fucked.
They'll come get you.
They're going to get you. So now you get to live in maybe a not very happy world, but an exciting world because you're seeing vans, you're seeing fucking now this is, by the way, this is not to say that there isn't some massive, huge, unknown swath of reality that's sitting right in front of us at all times that's actively being hidden by the United States government and the military who has the technology that they finally detected the thing and they don't want us to know because they know if we know, who the fuck knows what the reason is, but they don't want us to know just yet. I'm not saying that's not the case. I'm just saying with flat Earth in particular.
You're freaking me the fuck out, man. What do you know?
What do I know?
What do you know?
Man, the fucking problem is I can't talk about it yet.
Oh my
I stopped getting the check. They're like, you can't we'll tell you, but you can't completely reveal it.
This seems like one of the videos that would play before you were first loading up Half-Life 10.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
This is the new Half-Life. The government's hiding a dimension
that
they have access to.
It did just come out.
What?
That they picked up some kind of UFO. Like the government did release UFO video.
I always assume, and this is Captain Skeptical over here, I always assume if the government is ever saying that there's UFOs or something really crazy like that, it's to hide some shit they're doing in like Guatemala. It's like they don't want anybody to be paying attention to something weird they're doing.
Well,
they'll just start talking about UFOs. Everybody's like, for real? Like a real spaceship? You got a video, man? I
mean, it's a really huge question mark, which is, and there are people out there who who say they have answers to why they're just. I mean, this idea is there's a gradual dissemination of information that's happening because they're priming the pump, and then it splits into two versions. One of the versions of the stories is, fuck, if you want to dominate a planet, get them kind of like subconsciously, subliminally primed for the idea that, I think there's some really advanced technology out there and there's aliens riding around in it. And we've made contact. We've made contact with they call themselves the Galactic Council of Celestial Elders, and they've been making contact with us for the last 50 years, and they've been instructing us in how to not only reveal themselves to you, but to let the technology come out in a way that's not going to be completely catastrophic for our society. They're peace-loving, wonderful beings, but we've decided to follow their instructions to the T, and so now they're ready to introduce themselves. And then suddenly an alien is on TV, and suddenly the government is using a completely made-up thing to try to dominate the planet by saying, no, it's aliens, we found them, when in fact It's Project Bluebeam, right? That's one of the ideas. The other idea is all that shit's true. There's a thing that happens when a planet reaches a certain level of technological sophistication, that it gets contacted by some kind of order, council, federation of sentient technological civilizations, and they sort of begin to like walk the planet through phases of getting that shit out into the world in a way that isn't going to fuck up their planet. And they know how to do it. They have a system in place. They don't come from the stars. They're not something detectable by telescopes. They're like in the DMT realm, or they're like existing in some alternate dimension. And technology is just one of the things that they use to communicate with us.
I've been toying around with this idea for a long time, most of the time when I'm really high, that ideas are a life form. That it's not as simple as your creativity putting together some pieces that weren't there before. I think it's that, but I think it's also you're tuning into something. You're tuning into some weird, like some of the ideas almost seem to write themselves. And it could be because of the subconscious process of your mind, but it also could be because that these what ideas are and what just the concept of thinking is. It's essentially the seeds of creation, right? Yeah. Everything that's ever existed on Earth that humans have invented and built came from a mind. It came from thinking. How do I put together this house? Yes. How do I put together this skyscraper? How do I make a plane? How do I make a TV? How do I make a this? How do I make a that? Like, we're vessels for ideas. We're like sitting there with all these neurons firing and electricity going left and right and all these areas of our brains lighting up. It's catching ideas, you know?
That's it.
And when I'm super gone, especially on edibles, sometimes I feel like I'm in a river of ideas and I'm naked and I can't hold the fish. They're just flying by me. I'm like, Jesus, just trying to get these ideas.
That's right.
It almost feels like these are not my ideas. These are ideas that I'm working hard. I've put in the effort to go out and fish for these ideas.
Well, it's kind of like, imagine if there was a technology that could, like, we send out these signals into space, satellites with fucking records in them, but perhaps other civilizations are blasting the planet with ideas that are designed to be picked up by the scope of the human mind.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing is you're actually like popping into an alien frequency, which is filled with all these various ideas that are part of the cultivation of a planet to like try to get it to the point of like being able to make contact. And they're just seeding us with I mean, fuck, when you read like John Lilly and read about Tesla and read about a lot of the great inventions that have happened, the people who had the epiphanous moment, it wasn't like they were scrunching their fucking forehead. It was like the idea came to them in a vision. How many times do you hear over and over again, it came to me in a vision, a dream?
Do you know that the very notion of science itself came to, supposedly, like the birth of science, came from a dream that Descartes had?
Really?
Yeah, he had a dream that, I forget exactly the term that the way they used it. I'm sure it was deciphered too, right? Like, what did he originally speak? What language?
Descartes?
Descartes speak.
Fuck, I don't know, man. Like, I think it was like classic nerd.
He was out like at war. He was like campaigning.
He was French.
He's French.
Yeah.
He was, I believe it was like he was on a military campaign in the army or something along those lines. And he signed up for adventure to go off into the military. And during that time period, he had a dream that something about to be able to harness nature, it would be done in weights and measurements. I forget exactly the term. See if you can find the term that was essentially what people say. This is really when you talk about the very birth of like the earliest you could trace back the idea of modern science, like the ethics and the ideas, the concepts of modern science.
Well,
came from a dream.
It goes. I mean, before Descartes, we're dealing with like it gets really interesting because you're dealing with the alchemists like John Dee, who were. I mean, John Dee was someone who was.
Who's John Dee?
John Dee is this. Like, you know Jason Louv, you know who that is?
No.
He's an author. He just wrote this fucking badass book on John Dee, who's this one of those people, kind of like Crowley, who had this huge impact on society, but we don't really know a lot. Most people don't know who the fuck he was.
Right.
But you've heard of like the Enochian tablets or like the Enochian angels. Basically, John Dee was like an alchemist who was working with Queen Elizabeth to try to turn lead into gold, which was a big fucking pursuit back then, which is like, shit, if we can transmute metals into gold, it's like, I mean,
yeah, they all tried to do that, right? Was that when they first started recognizing elements? Like, when did they first start recognizing elements?
I don't, probably that. It must be through alchemy, because they were like trying to break things down to their fundamental, they're trying to break things down to like their fundamental components.
How many movies are about that? Someone trying to make gold.
Well, I mean, it's one of the great pursuits.
Yeah.
And it's actually it's what we're still doing. Only we're not trying to turn lead into gold. We're trying to turn lead into a thinking machine. That's what we're doing now. Because better than turning matter into gold, if you can turn matter into a fucking thing that is thinking and sentient, then it can figure out how to turn lead into gold by its advanced ability to process data.
And if you were an alien race, you would be concerned about nuclear weapons for sure, but you would really be concerned about artificial life.
Sure.
What are you assholes about to hit the switch on?
Yeah.
Have you thought this through? We're like those minions in Despicable Me, where we're just wrecking shit and eating nails. We're just trying things, sticking electrical sockets in our heads.
Fuck yeah.
Dude.
Can you imagine if beings in the DMT realm decided to start setting off nuclear explosions? I mean, maybe that's what an earthquake is. Maybe when we have an earthquake, it's like a nuclear test in another dimension shaking our planet. Yeah, I said it. No, I don't fucking believe it. I can already hear the like people being like, what the fuck are you talking about, man?
June 8th, 1637, Descartes codifies scientific method. Wow, interesting. He outlines his rules for understanding the natural world through reason and skepticism, forming the foundation of the scientific method still in use today. There's a term that he had that he came up with like in a dream. See if you can find that, because there was like a phrase that he said, obviously translated from French.
The reason the Descartes fucking bugs
I think
me.
Therefore I Am, that one.
No, it's not. I think therefore I am.
Okay.
But that was obviously an interesting one.
He liked to do shit like, and I could be wrong about this, but I clearly remember reading about this. He was like, what do you call it? A mechanist, or like he believed that animals were just machines, basically. And so like he would like, and Jamie, if you could look this up so I don't get assuaged with people being like, that's a different person. But apparently he would do shit like hold a dog's beating heart in his hand while it died.
Oh my God.
And he said things like, people who are afraid to kick dogs aren't really my students, because they know. Look that up, Jimmy.
You
please.
sure that's not like propaganda? If there was like an Infowars.com back then, you'd be like, what's going on here?
This is why I'm covering it with like, I'm not
They're saying
sure.
he's out there kicking dogs.
I think he was kicking dogs. I think Descartes liked
What
to
I just
kick.
found is pretty rough.
Maybe they all kicked dogs back then. In a nutshell, French philosopher René Descartes didn't believe animals had souls. To test his theory, he nailed his wife's dog to a board and chopped it open while the poor thing was still alive.
Fun guy. Creator of science was nailing dogs to fucking boards.
Where'd you read this? How do we know this is real?
It's on fuckdescartes.com.
Knowledge nuts? Knowledge nuts. I hope you really are knowledge nuts.
No, I'm nuts for knowledge.
I hope you're
Look
not
at that guy's
propaganda
face,
nuts.
dude. That guy definitely
Yeah.
looks like he fucking nailed dogs to boards. Look at that fucking face. Look at it. Look at it squirm.
The greatest minds are capable of the greatest vices as well as the greatest virtues. That's what he said after he cut open the cat.
Dude, that's like, it's the father of science is also like, that's Jeffrey Dahmer level shit too. Like he was not
I think people did a lot of that back then.
nailing dogs to boards.
I just think the value of life was severely diminished. I think back then the 1600s people were dying left and right of everything.
Yeah.
You got a cold, dead. Break your leg, dead. Get gored by a bull, dead. Everything, dead. You got an infection, dead. Well, you got the flu, probably dead.
But that's definitely in Europe. Like in India, I'm not saying in India it was like a utopia and everyone was sweet to animals, but in Buddhism, it was like it was a lot more compassionate. Like
That's true. Why do you think that happened? Why does like Thailand and places that are Buddhist places generally I mean, obviously there's violence everywhere, but generally more of a peaceful vibe, right? Like Buddhist nations and Buddhist countries, a little bit more, obviously, flaws with everything.
Yes.
Anything involving people, you're going to have outliers. But over and all, like one of the things that my friend was telling me about Thailand, he was like, dude, there's no crime over there. He's like, you just go over there. He's like, everybody, it's like real easy to get along with everybody. It's like, it's super safe. Nobody gets robbed. He goes, it's really rare.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand why that way of thinking emerged in the East, and that connection with the self emerged in the East versus what happened in the West, which was basically a decimation of a previous religion,
right?
Paganism, whatever you want to call it, earth-based religion, connection with life and nature.
What's really interesting to me about that is that the DNA of paganism is still in the system. It's almost like we absorbed it.
Yeah.
Like, or I say we, I mean Christians, you know, Christian nation.
Well, look at
we're a Christian nation.
This is, I'm sure we've talked about this on the podcast, but it's something I marvel over all the time. I think about it a lot, which is the Catholic Mass. It's when you look at the Catholic Mass and you look at the New Testament, the Last Supper, and you realize, like, in the fucking synoptic gospels and in any of the gospels, there is nowhere that Jesus is saying, what you do is take a piece of bread and utter these prayers over it to create my flesh that then you eat. It's not there. The ritual isn't there. But the interpretation of that has turned into what is called high magic. It's called, like, it's a ceremonial magic where you're transforming bread into the flesh of a sacrificed God. And people do that every fucking Sunday and are like, this is totally normal. Magic? What are you talking about? I'm not into fucking magic. What I do is I eat the flesh of a God that was sacrificed by a father God so that my sins could be purified. That's not magic.
When did that originate? When the sacrament?
Well, I've read that it has something to do with, it goes back to Egypt, that it's some kind of high magic Egyptian ritual.
It was a mushroom.
Or as a mushroom.
They probably had a big bag of mushrooms, and everybody came up and they put it on your tongue, and they said, good luck.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, this is the flesh.
See you on the other side.
Well, I mean, they said, you know, this is the flesh of God. Eat this and you'll remember who you truly are. And they gave you the psychedelic, and you took it and you merged back into the divine and realized your true identity, so that for the rest of the week you were able to hang out with people and not be a complete asshole, because you know you share the same soul and that you're basically made of love, as opposed to thinking that you and I are separate and that we're mostly sinful, evil things whose flesh is impure. I mean, that's another fucking sweet gift that came from fundamentalist Christianity, is the concept that our bodies are evil. We can't be naked around each other even now. Like, you can't take your clothes off around people without seeming completely insane. You will get arrested. If you go outside in your fundamental body that you were born into the universe with, you will get arrested. Like, you can't walk around as you are. You have to cover it in clothes, or you're considered to be a fucking pervert nudist.
You're a psycho.
So yeah, the fundamental vehicle that our soul rides around in is considered profane. Dude, and like, you see a fucking dick when you're like walking down the street, some dude decided, you're like, fuck, a dick.
Meanwhile, you can see a dick accidentally at the bathroom, and it doesn't bother you.
Doesn't bother you, because in the bathroom it's okay for a moment to profane the world with your fucking dick. So it's like, when you start really looking at all the traces of not just pagan culture, but just insanity from a fundamentalist perspective of the universe that has its roots in what appears to be a misunderstanding of a really beautiful story, then it's like mind-boggling.
Yeah, not just a misunderstanding, but probably a conscious misrepresentation of the original story that's molded to suit whoever's needs is in charge at the moment.
That's right. Yeah. And people, dude, I'll tell you, man, Catholics, they feel guilty. Like,
dude, I'm Catholic.
You still probably feel a little bit of
a little bit.
Dude, I mean,
I'm not Catholic really, but I was when I was in first grade.
I have this Aleister Crowley poster I was going to bring to you.
Oh, wow. 1079.
Yeah.
That was the year. The year 1000. It's a weird sounding name. Oh, year rather. 1079. It feels like I'm saying something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing, man.
Yeah, 1079. So this is way after Jesus.
Yeah, almost 1,000 years.
Yeah, they started doing the magical ritual. And so it's like to say that this is connected to Christianity is really, it's like, actually, no, it's Christianity's a song and this is a dance people decided to do to it. But to say, you know what I mean? To say that it's like, that it has anything to do with Jesus is not true, unless you're going to say that Jesus transmitted the data after his death into some kind of mystic or seer who had the vision of this. Now, I'm not knocking the fucking Catholic Mass. I think it's beautiful, but let's just admit what it is. Magic. It's ritual magic. You're doing ritual magic, and you're doing something that's been going on for a very long time, probably before 1079. That dude wasn't just like sitting around and like, hey, I got an idea. Let's start saying prayer over the bread and the bread's going to turn into flesh. It was more like, hey, you know, we've been meeting, doing these rituals secretly. Why don't we just incorporate the story of Christianity into this ritual that we've been doing for a very long time to sort of purify ourselves by connecting to the universe and acknowledging the fact that existence itself is predicated on devouring the flesh of some other being. Not, you know, like we're always in the process of inhaling the universe, exhaling the universe, eating each other. The universe is eating itself. And so the Mass is this ritualized version of like, behold, we're eating the flesh of God in everything we do. And there's something really beautiful about that.
I mean, there's no getting around life eats life. Even the various factions of people on the left and the right, and people that are animal rights activists versus people that are butchers, you're all eating something that's alive. I mean, you can make the distinction that the plants aren't suffering like the animals do, and that's why it's okay.
Sure.
And I agree with you for the most part.
Back up. You're not in my thoughts at all.